All right, all right. Welcome, everyone. I think today we have a very special episode because today we were finally able to share four key decisions that we wanted to share with the community and that we made to really reposition IOTA in the market and to basically make sure that IOTA is going to become one of the biggest Web3 ecosystems in the space. And what I wanted to do today is go through those decisions, give all of you more background on why those decisions were made, the kind of impact that they will have. And at the end of the show, we will also do an AMA. So you can also ask your questions on the YouTube chat. And I'll make sure to answer most of them. Maybe some things first, right? Because some of those decisions that we have made are actually quite controversial, and I'm not the first. I'm the first person to say that they have also been very difficult decisions to make, and so that's why I wanted to make sure that everybody basically has a set of understanding of how we really want to grow with IOTA and how we want to move forward with IOTA. If you look at IOTA, if you look at the history, IOTA was one of the very first layer ones in this space. I remember when we joined the crypto space in the early 2010s, right, like 2011, 2012, 2013. All of the IOTA founders were part of crypto, were part of the blockchain space because we really fundamentally believed in the technology and the impact that decentralization will have on the world, right? Like we were all sort of like revolutionaries. We were all in this because of the principles and the shared values that this technology had with our personal shared values, right? I personally got into blockchain, for example, because of permissionless innovation, right? I couldn't open a PayPal account. And so I got to Bitcoin, and I understood the basic principles of peer-to-peer money, and it completely convinced me that this is the future, right? And many of the other IOTA co-founders also got in it because they really believe that this technology is there to help us realize a better future, right? Where people are empowered through technology and where people are empowered to realize their personal dreams and their personal goals, and they're not being suppressed, and that they're actually being empowered to participate in our digital economy. So when we founded IOTA, obviously the most important goal for us was to make sure that IOTA is going to have impact on the real world. And that's also why with IOTA, we've never really participated or engaged in the crypto ecosystem, right? Like we've always sort of had the weird relationship with it where we were sort of part of it, but we were not, because we've never really engaged in the usual crypto games, right? We never paid exchanges, paid for marketing, advertising. We've always been focused on core R&D with the IOTA Foundation, and we've always been focused on actually showcasing the real value of IOTA and of blockchain in the real world, right? Working with big companies, working with governments to showcase the potential to realize new use cases, and with that move forward to get IOTA adopted in the real world. And so that was really the founding principles of IOTA. And because we were very principled, so to say, we had high ideals of the future, and we really believed that we can sort of disrupt the existing industry through that. We've always done things differently, right? So for example, with the IOTA token distribution, we've given 100% of the token distribution to the community when we started the crowd sale in late 2015. And we've always been very upfront about our endeavor that IOTA is high risk, right? And we're not in this to make money for ourselves. We're not in this to make money for others, including the token holders, but we're really in this to realize a better future. And I think after all this time, right, after all those 8 years, to create a better future is still our most important guiding principle, right? And I've said this many times: if all that we've achieved is that a bunch of nerds got rich, we've failed miserably with blockchain and with IOTA. And so I hope that all of you also understand where we're coming from. That all of the decisions that we're making, all of the difficult decisions that we're making them to make sure that IOTA really succeeds in the future. And success for the future for us really means that IOTA becomes this universal digital infrastructure that it becomes an ecosystem for others to build on, for others to become successful building on top of IOTA, and for us to really empower people, but also to empower the existing system, so to say, governments, enterprises, with our technology, so that they are part of this new digital economy that we envision for the future. And so this is sort of very important for all of you to understand that we're really doing this for the better of IOTA, to make sure that we have a fighting chance, so to say, and that IOTA will be successful in the future. So that's sort of the background. What are the 4 decisions that we made? Let me share them with you one by one. Just one second. So I think the first decision, and it's not an obvious decision actually, but the first decision that we wanted to share with the community is really that we want to double down on IOTA. If you look at IOTA's history, we were always guided by our vision of the future, and we were always guided by doing things differently than others in the space, right? The initial vision of IOTA was this machine economy, and since then it has obviously grown from just being on an IoT-focused technology to a technology that is going to be adapted across all different industries and can be used for digital identities for humans, can be used in the financial industry. So it's really about positioning IOTA as a trust layer. And as we've obviously built IOTA over the years, there was many good decisions that we've made. There was also many bad decisions that we've made. There was also many controversies and also drama within the ecosystem, and obviously that also tainted the brand of IOTA. And so that's also why IOTA was never really part of the crypto ecosystem itself, right? So you could really compare IOTA more to a hyperledger or another enterprise technology rather than crypto layer 1, right? We've never thrown events, we've never had people participate or be rewarded for their participation in IOTA. And we've never played the crypto game, so to say. Some people might obviously argue it would have been better to rebrand IOTA and move forward with a different brand to let go of the past, so to say. But I think all of us identify with IOTA, and this struggle, this survival, and also this uphill battle that we've had has made us stronger. And it really shows true character that after all this time, we are still here fighting, and we're still here to realize this main goal that we have with IOTA, to have impact in the real world and to make sure that our technology is going to be adopted in the real world. And we are not going to give up until we actually realize that goal. And so instead of moving forward with a different name, we want to double down on IOTA. And we want to really make sure that IOTA is the main layer 1, is the main crypto Web3 ecosystem that we are establishing. And as part of that, we obviously also want to double down on the IOTA token and not dilute its value across the ecosystem by having different tokens on the layer 2 or by having different tokens for smart contract execution and so on. But we really want the IOTA token to be the universal token that is going to be used across the entire IOTA ecosystem. IOTA has to become money in our ecosystem. It has to be the store of value. It has to be the unit of exchange for IOTA to really succeed. So we really want to double down on IOTA. Obviously, Shimmer continues to play and be positioned as this complementary staging network of IOTA. So with Shimmer, everything stays the same, right? All of these technical advancements, all of the progress that we're making will first come on Shimmer, usually with a 3 to 6 month time frame, sometimes longer, as we've seen with the Stardust release. But Shimmer will always be the network where these upgrades will come first. So you can really see IOTA and Shimmer as a package. And I think with this focus on those 2 tokens, the IOTA token and the Shimmer token, we really have a strong way to position ourselves in the market, where Shimmer can be a little bit more edgy, degen focused, and IOTA can be more focused on real-world adoption and enterprise use cases. So that's the first decision, right? We want to double down on IOTA and the IOTA token to make sure that the utility, scalability, and the economic activity in the IOTA network increases. Now, the main question that many of you have also had is like, how are you going to actually generate enough demand for mana, right? As some of you might know, like when you hold IOTA tokens with IOTA 2.0, you're going to generate mana, and mana is this resource, or this we also call it credits, in the network that gives you access to the base layer, to this base infrastructure, which allows you to execute transactions, right? So one of the main decisions that we made was actually to introduce programmability on the layer 1. And this is a very exciting new introduction, and it was actually only possible after a lot of research and a lot of thinking, and also seeing some of the advancements in other protocols, that we could really realize layer 1 smart contracts. And so what layer 1 smart contracts really offer us is that now the IOTA layer 1 is really the settlement and consensus layer, right? It's really effective in transaction settlement. It's really effective in tokenizing assets. And now we're also making it a very, very efficient protocol to actually have programmability on the layer 1. So that means that there's going to be smart contracts on the layer 1. So you can actually create decentralized applications on the layer 1. And those smart contracts on the layer 1 will actually consume mana. So in order to execute a smart contract, in order to use a dApp, you will actually need to burn mana in order to use a smart contract. That in turn will obviously significantly increase the demand for mana, which is a very exciting property, because now with an increased demand for mana, we will also have an increased demand for IOTA, right? And through that, we can really increase the economic activity within the IOTA ecosystem. The way that we envision this to happen is that the layer 2 is actually going to be focused on application-specific chains. So for example, we could never host the EVM on the layer 1 for our programmable smart contracts, because it would significantly limit the scalability of the overall network. So instead, the EVM chain, like we are right now introducing with the Shimmer EVM, is going to be on the layer 2, and the layer 1 will have a different set of smart contracts that are really more as a base infrastructure. You can really think about the layer 1 becoming this public goods infrastructure, where many of the core functionalities, including liquidity pools, stable coins, tokenized assets, will be hosted, and those tokenized assets will then have free access to the entire layer 2 ecosystem. I'll go into more detail about the architecture that we're envisioning with IOTA later. But this was a very important decision to make, and it was really only possible to make this decision within the last couple of months, because now we're really positioning IOTA as a much more competitive layer 1 network, where the IOTA layer 1 is not just there for transactional settlement, like is the case in Ripple, for example, but where the layer 1 in IOTA is really going to be the main hub that will connect the layer 2 networks, and it will also see a lot of the main dApps being built on the layer 1. So with that, we obviously want to increase the demand for mana and to increase the demand for IOTA. Now, coming from that, a very difficult decision that we've had to make was around assembly. So assembly, as it was originally envisioned, was a layer 2 network supposed to help us create a decentralized ecosystem of layer 2 networks, where assembly would basically be the main hub to build and find the validators, connect the validators, and then to set up and deploy new layer 2 networks. And we wanted to start this initially with the EVM, right, which is right now being tested with the Shimmer EVM. But the vision behind this was really to build sort of like a decentralized ecosystem of validators, and would then secure these layer 2 networks. While we really believed that this was the right decision to take, or the right direction to take initially, I think all of us in the foundation, but also people in the community, started to realize that more and more with the advancements that were happening in the crypto space, right, especially with ZK rollups, which are much more exciting than validity proofs, right, where you actually need to use a token, where you need to use staking and sort of complex economic algorithms to secure the network. With ZK rollups, you really are able to source the security from the layer 1 through some complex cryptography. And with that, you can launch layer 2 networks without requiring tokens to secure them. So that means that the security of the layer 1 and the layer 2 is actually the same. So that was a very exciting development. And many of the projects like ZK Sync, like Polygon, ZK EVM, and so on, have made really incredible progress over the last few months. And so for us, it was also a realization that even if we were to launch assembly and really invest resources into it, and inevitably it would fall behind the competition and it wouldn't serve a strong purpose in our network, because even once we had it live and we were able to deploy networks through it, ZK rollups would inevitably would actually come to IOTA, right? And they would actually take the place of assembly. And in addition to that, by actually having layer 1 smart contracts, it also became very clear that it makes a lot more sense to focus on that development than to focus on the development of this decentralized validator selection solution on the layer 2. So the advancement of layer 1 smart contracts and the advancement of ZK rollups made it very clear that assembly, that it wouldn't make sense to launch assembly anymore. Obviously, this was a difficult decision because we were very excited about assembly, and IOTA holders also staked for assembly tokens. But I think we had to make this decision to really make sure that IOTA as a protocol stays focused on what is most important, which is really to establish it as this sort of trust layer, as the layer 1. And then we also made sure that the IOTA token itself would actually benefit the most from this new economic activity through smart contracts on the IOTA network. So therefore, one of the main decisions that we're making is that we're no longer launching assembly, and that we're no longer launching the assembly token. As was already mentioned here, IOTA holders that have staked for assembly tokens will be eligible for an IOTA token airdrop. And this gets me to the fourth decision, and also the most difficult decision, and I would also say the most important decision, is the establishment of a new ecosystem fund. So as all of you know, looking at the history of IOTA, we really started IOTA with high ideals of the world. And maybe because we were kind of naive, and new to the game, new to the startup world, right? And we were actually able to take on these big challenges, because where others actually saw all these big problems that weren't actually solvable, we actually saw opportunity, right? And that's why it was good that we started IOTA in that regard with those ideals, because they helped us guide us throughout all those years, and they continue to guide us to this day. And one of the most important ideals, which was really like this community ownership and this decentralization of IOTA, and it really helped build a strong core over the years. It also made it very clear that in I would say, a more commercialized industry, where billions of dollars are being invested every year, tens of thousands of people are working on it, and sort of insiders are dominating the game, it became very clear that it was impossible for IOTA to compete in this market. Because think about it, right? Like, we started IOTA in 2015. 100% of the token supply was distributed to those initial token holders. We've only raised $500,000, and we've not done any fundraising since then. And with this $500,000, we've built up IOTA, we've built up the network, we've given value or created value for the entire ecosystem and for the IOTA token. But we never were able, and we've never actually spent any funding on growth, on adoption areas. We've only been able to do the bare minimum when it comes to the ecosystem support. And most of our funding was actually being spent on R&D, right? Making sure that the protocol is being developed, and that we are actually making progress on those important topics like programmability, smart contracts, and IOTA 2.0. Now, in a market that is being dominated by those that have the most funding, and a market is being dominated by projects that actually have taken most of the token supply for themselves, it became very obvious that we need to make some changes to IOTA in order to compete in this market. Because if our competitors take 60, 70, 80% of the token supply for themselves and have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, how are we actually able to compete with them if we only have a bare minimum amount of funding? And if we don't have any big supporters, any big exchanges, any big influential people supporting us. So it was kind of like a realization that all of us in the foundation had, that even once we have delivered Corticide, IOTA 2.0, and the smart contracts, it wouldn't be enough, and it's kind of a like it really hits you if you think about it, that even if you build the best tech, you're not going to succeed. And it's a very important realization to have, because it's not just about building tech in this space. I would say tech is probably one of the probably the second or the third most important activities in this space, because again, it's all open source. So if we were to launch IOTA 2.0, there could always be a new competitor coming around, taking out that tech, raising more funding than us, and then actually overtaking us in the market. And so it was this realization that we actually needed to really recapitalize IOTA so that we could finally combine the right technology, right, with the EVM, which is about to be released, with IOTA 2.0, which is also going to be shared with the community very soon, that we really need to combine technology with the necessary funding and the support for the ecosystem so that we can succeed. Because no matter what we would try otherwise, it wouldn't be enough. And so somebody in the community just asked me before, what is actually the biggest risk for IOTA? And I can tell you very openly, the biggest risk for IOTA is that we're not able to catch up, because we are catching up with our competition, right? Like now that we've replaced the coordinator with the validator committee, like as we've shared here, it is a big promise that we finally made, right? Removing the coordinator, but the validator committee is only getting us this far, right? It's as decentralized as Polygon, as decentralized as Binance Smart Chain, and other proof of authority chains. But we need to go a step further, right? We need IOTA 2.0. So this is only a step in between. So it's really important for all of us to realize is that we are catching up, right? We are very advanced in certain areas, like for example, in trade and logistics or in digital identity. And I would also say that we're getting much more speed when it comes to tokenizing real world assets. But unless we really make some important decisions, I really worry that the biggest risk for IOTA is that we're not able to catch up with our competition, right? Because if our competitors have hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, and they have maybe double or even triple the size of their IOTA Foundation, they have a huge ecosystem that was funded over the last 2 or 3 years. Unless we set up an ecosystem fund ourselves and finally take matters into our own hands, the biggest risk to IOTA is that we will have done too little too late. And then all that we've built was great tech. We've contributed to distributed ledgers. We will hopefully have a mark in the history books, but that will have been it, right? And I hope that all of you understand that there's like this real desire in all of us to make sure that IOTA is a leader in this market. Like we are not part of IOTA to be ranked number 100 in the market cap rankings. I would see it personally as a huge failure to drop out of the top 100. I would see it as a huge failure that we're not going back into the top 10, right? Because I personally see IOTA as a leading project. And that's why I wake up every single morning to make sure that IOTA succeeds. And all of these decisions that we're making here is to make sure that IOTA succeeds. Because the worst decisions that we can make is to make no decision at all. Because then we're basically just being stuck in this limbo where we are right now, where we're not able to do things with ecosystem growth, with adoption, with making sure that IOTA raises awareness, with making sure that people understand what we have been working on over the last few years. And so that's why this ecosystem fund is really a key decision for us to make sure that we have not done too little too late, but for us to make sure that we are able to do as much as possible for IOTA to succeed. So it's very important that all of you understand why we have made this decision here. So to go through all of this in a little bit more detail, let me just go through it. So the way that IOTA is going to evolve is that we have the layer 1 as the main consensus and settlement layer. And with the introduction of layer 1 smart contracts, the way that we're envisioning IOTA evolve is that it will really be this connectivity tissue. So that layer 2 networks can be deployed on IOTA. It can be application-specific chains. for example, for a game, or for example, EPSI is also an application-specific chain, or it can be more general purpose networks, like for example, the EVM, where we are now offering Solidity smart contracts to our ecosystem. So this combination of layer 2 and the layer 1 makes IOTA incredibly powerful for builders. And obviously, we're making all of these decisions to make sure that IOTA becomes a very strong force in Web3, so that we are going to have NFTs, DeFi, so that we are going to really see new crypto plays on top of IOTA as well. But all of these decisions are also being made to make sure that IOTA will actually be the main layer where digital identities are going to be created by countries, right? That's what we're really doing this for. And that we're also seeing real-world assets being tokenized on IOTA. And be the main layer, be the main network where those assets are being stored, secured, and then being used to access other layer 2 networks, or being used to access other networks across other chains. So IOTA is really becoming more full-featured, so to say, with the introduction of layer 1 smart contracts. And the way that layer 1 smart contracts are going to work is that it will be a general purpose virtual machine on the layer 1. And what's very exciting is that it will actually run on top of our DAG architecture. And so it's actually designed to not limit the scalability of the network. And obviously, Mana will be used as the main way to access these smart contracts and pay for the execution of smart contracts. So right now, our team is focused on the research and sort of defining a clear proof of concept for layer 1 smart contracts. It's important to mention this is envisioned as a multi-year effort. So while we are all super excited about this development, and while we are definitely going to put a lot more resources on layer 1 smart contracts, it's important for all of you to understand that layer 1 smart contracts is going to be an effort that will only come to life after IOTA 2.0. And it's also important to mention that layer 1 smart contracts has no delay on IOTA 2.0. So it's a completely separate team working on it. And we're going to share more information about this whole architecture over the next few weeks or months, probably. And we'll then also obviously invite the community to actually participate in it and also see how it's going to look like, and then also hopefully also participate in it in a sort of alpha net sooner rather than later. When it comes to the tokenomics of IOTA, now that we have layer 1 smart contracts, and now that we hopefully soon will have IOTA 2.0, we really have the ability to create intrinsic value on IOTA. And I always like to give this comparison to IOTA that we're building the next evolution of the cloud, right? Where the cloud was really this main enabler of digital technologies. We're really the main enabler of trust-based technologies and networks. So we are taking this next level of creating a digital infrastructure where new businesses are going to be built on top of it. And so similarly to the cloud, where you have credits to access the compute, storage, and network infrastructure of the cloud, and IOTA, you have Mana that act as credits so that you can access the layer 1, you can access the block space of the layer 1, right? So you can make transactions and secure data, anchor layer 2 chains. And also now with this move, also execute layer 1 smart contracts. And the main objective with all of this is that the IOTA network as a layer 1 is going to be underpinned with real economic utility, right? Because IOTA only makes sense if it's not being driven by speculation, but it's being driven by real demand that is happening on the layer 1. And real demand is being created through applications that solve problems. So with layer 1 smart contracts and also with layer 2 application chains, we are finally able to create this real value on IOTA. And this was also one of the main reasons why we have sort of started to prioritize the development of the Shimmer EVM, or the EVM in general, because all of us also understood that it's more important that we have programmability, so that we have developers, dApps, and that we have an ecosystem building on top of Shimmer and on top of IOTA. And by combining this also on the layer 1 now, we can really take this to the next level. So I think that's really exciting. And In regards to assembly, I think I've already mentioned most of the important parts of it. Maybe something to mention about what is actually happening with the ideas of assembly. So many of the ideas behind assembly, like all of the development behind assembly, was already being done by the IOTA chains framework, or IOTA smart contracts, as we call it. And we're really going to focus on that framework and invest more resources into it to make sure that it becomes a framework that is adaptable and that can really also meet the requirements of enterprises, governments, and also obviously of Web3 builders, so that all of these new app chains and ZK rollups can be deployed on top of IOTA. So after the development of the Shimmer EVM is done and it's deployed on the Shimmer network, we will obviously focus on further improving and expanding the IOTA chains framework. And many of the other ideas are also flowing obviously into IOTA layer 1 smart contracts. This is a very important point to highlight here. All of you, or many of you, have staked your IOTA tokens over the last 2 years to get assembly tokens. So you will now be eligible for an IOTA token airdrop. And this IOTA token airdrop is going to be released over a 2-year period. So it will be gradually released in your wallet. And so instead of receiving those assembly tokens, you will be eligible for that airdrop instead. So I think that's also a nice compromise, so to say. About the ecosystem fund, we really want to do this. Like, this is sort of like the first and the final time that such a decision can be made. And many of the other protocols have done this with their founding, right? So all the other layer 1s that have taken a majority of the token supply for an ecosystem fund and for the foundations and so on, they've obviously done this at the founding of the project. We are making this decision now, and it has obviously been a difficult decision to make, but we feel that now the timing is right to make such a decision. And with the EVM being in front of us and being deployed on Shimmer, and with IOTA 2.0 also really getting ready, and we're starting the education campaign also very soon, now is the time to make this decision. Because once IOTA 2.0 is live on the mainnet, IOTA will be fully decentralized. There will be no validator committee, no coordinator whatsoever. So this was really the best time to make such a decision. I do want to mention, obviously, that the community is the most important thing for us, right? And we really appreciate the dedication that all of you have given to IOTA. And I think all of us can say that we have sacrificed a lot for IOTA. So it has been a difficult relationship at times for all of us. But ultimately, I think we're all part of IOTA because we feel that this is something much bigger than each and every one of us could realize on our own, right? IOTA isn't a project that is driven by a single individual, that is driven by a handful of individuals. Like, IOTA is really being driven by its community, and that is what has made it so strong. So all these new people that we are introducing to IOTA, they are so excited about seeing such a vibrant community that really cares for IOTA. So I really want all of you to understand that we really appreciate this dedication over the last few years and this continued dedication. And I also hope that all of you understand that this wasn't an easy decision for us to make, but it was a necessary one. And it was necessary because this was the only decision we could make to make sure that IOTA wouldn't continue to fall behind and would actually continue to lose market share. And it would, in the end, be too little, too late. So I hope that all of you understand we really have the best interests of IOTA in mind, and that this project that we have dedicated 8+ years to is really going to create the impact that we envision for it, because that is all that matters, right? And so this is why this ecosystem fund is a key component to make sure that we realize this vision of IOTA. So let's quickly talk about the ecosystem fund itself. As mentioned, the ecosystem fund is going to be created through a token increase. So the total supply of IOTA will be increased to 4.6 billion. That is then the new total fixed supply. So once that this has been reached, it will never increase again. Obviously, this supply is only going to be released gradually over the next 4 years. So it will come to about 12% inflation per year. So it's a temporary token inflation where the token supply will increase by 12% per year for the next 4 years. And after this 4-year period, the token supply will reach this 4.6 billion. After those 4 years, the existing holders of IOTA, today's holders, will have around 60% of the token supply, and the new ecosystem fund, the contributors, and the token airdrop, the IOTA token airdrop, will be 40% of the token supply. So here you can see a rough distribution chart. The ecosystem fund itself is comprised of the IOTA Foundation. So the IOTA Foundation, as many of you know it, was the main entity that received a 5% donation at the founding of IOTA. So the community donated 5% to establish the IOTA Foundation, and that 5% of IOTA tokens was then being used over the last 8 years to fund the development of IOTA and to continue to support the ecosystem. The IOTA Foundation is a regulated entity. It's regulated in Germany, so it's a non-profit foundation. So it can only use the funds it receives according to its charter. So it's a highly regulated and audited structure. And so all the IOTA Foundation can focus on is to spend its funding on R&D. This is obviously very good to some extent, because it means that we are really strictly focused on what is most important with the IOTA Foundation. So the IOTA Foundation can really only do R&D. And we're also doing some regulatory affairs work with the IOTA Foundation because it's part of our education efforts. But the IOTA Foundation was never able to really support the ecosystem. So we were never able to do grants or invest in marketing, other ecosystem support, or growth activities. And so this is why we have also realized over the last year or two that we need to have different entities in the IOTA ecosystem to really make sure that we can grow IOTA the way we want it to. So next to the IOTA Foundation, we have the Tangle Ecosystem Association. So that entity was set up in Switzerland, in Zug. It's an association, and so it's a membership organization. And this association is, according to its charter, only allowed to spend its funding on supporting the IOTA and the Shimmer ecosystem. So all the funding that goes into this entity can only be used to support the growth of IOTA and its ecosystem. In a similar way, we're also setting up now this UE Foundation, which we've actually announced yesterday and which we're incredibly excited about, because this new DLT Foundation in the UE, in Abu Dhabi, has a very similar purpose to the Tangle Ecosystem Association, in that, according to its charter, it can only support the growth and the development of the IOTA ecosystem and the Shimmer ecosystem. So those two entities, the Tangle Ecosystem Association and the new DLT Foundation being set up in the UAE, are really the main entities that are going to host and manage the new ecosystem fund in IOTA. Something that was very important for us was to really make sure that this ecosystem fund is going to be managed together with the community, right? So these new funds are going to go into these entities. These entities have a board of directors. It will obviously govern the entities. But in addition to that, because they were structured, because they have this unique company structure, the association and the DLT Foundation will actually allow for committees to be structured. So you can think about these similarly to DAOs and sub-DAOs, right? Where we have the Treasury DAO, where we've had to set up this legal entity. Now we're actually able to have a much more agile, a much more fluid structure, where the community is now able to propose new committees. For example, setting up the gaming ecosystem in Korea for IOTA or Shimmer, proposing this idea, discussing and debating it in the community, holding a token vote, and then actually setting up under the legal umbrella of the Tangle Ecosystem Association or the DLT Foundation, a committee that will then be set up by community members and will then be able to manage part of the budget of the association and of the ecosystem fund as a whole. So we really think that this is a unique way for us to invite the community to help manage the ecosystem fund together with us, and to make sure that it is managed in a way that really caters for all the needs in the community, because quite frankly, the ecosystem fund should not be managed just by one entity, not by two entities, but it should really have the involvement of the entire community. Because there's many ideas that we could never think of, right? And so we really want to make this in a permissionless way, where anybody can propose ideas on how these budgets should be spent. The exact structure of this committee setup and everything, we're obviously going to define over the next few weeks together with all of you. And so you will actually see a governance proposal coming on the governance forum, so we can really debate how the ecosystem fund should be spent. Now, one important thing to mention here, right? These tokens get unlocked over a 4-year period. Just because they get unlocked doesn't mean that they are going to be sent to exchanges. Quite the contrary, right? It's very important to keep in mind that those tokens that are going to be minted on the IOTA network are actually going to go into the ecosystem fund, so that the ecosystem fund will keep it in its treasury. So while there is going to be a 12% inflation per year, it doesn't mean that the tokens will actually decrease in value, because these tokens are not going to be sold on exchanges. Right? So it's important to keep in mind that these tokens really are there to help us focus on the ecosystem. So the other point is the contributors. So those are actually sort of partners and contributors that have either provided funding or that are continuing to provide important support for IOTA to succeed in the market. Those tokens are also going to be unlocked over a 2-year period. And all of these tokens of the ecosystem fund are going to be unlocked over a 4-year period, by the way. And we're going to share more about these contributors over the next few months as well, so that all of you can also know who's participating, who's engaging. And so you can also better understand how they're really helping IOTA. It is important to highlight that this new ecosystem fund, the main bet that all of us are making is that through this token inflation that is happening on IOTA, that we're actually able to onboard the right partners to help IOTA succeed in this market, and to help IOTA see or get access to new parts of the industry, new parts of the market, and really also see IOTA succeed and become one of the biggest DLT ecosystems. All right, so I think it's important to highlight that the main intention of this ecosystem fund is to grow IOTA. And we're growing IOTA by making the right decisions and onboarding the right partners. Key to all of this will be the Tangle Ecosystem Association, right? Helping the ecosystem itself, but it will also be our new UAE foundation. And we have a strong commitment to the UAE. So we are setting up a regulated entity in Abu Dhabi. And we're also right now in the process of making important partnerships in the UAE. And many of those will then be shared with the community as well. I hope that all of you can understand that we're really in this to make sure that IOTA gets a fast track to adoption. That we're no longer just catching up, but that we're really leapfrogging, and that we're able to advance in certain areas faster than our competitors, right? We're not going to be able to create a better DeFi ecosystem than others. That train has already passed. So instead of wasting precious tokens on airdrops and on incentivizing liquidity, our focus needs to be on attracting new investors, on attracting new types of assets onto our network, so that we're not just creating a DeFi ecosystem like everybody else has built with a more degen focus, but so that we're really creating a new kind of institutional DeFi ecosystem where we're starting to onboard much larger capital. Because if you think about DeFi today, it's just a couple of billions of dollars that are being rehypothecated and used across different networks. So we're still very early, if you think about it. Now with these new partners that we thankfully have in the UAE, and we're obviously going to share much more details about that soon, our big objective will be to onboard much larger liquidity pools and much larger asset classes onto the IOTA network and also onto Shimmer, so that we're not just chasing the trends of others, but so that we're really defining the trends of others. And so this ecosystem fund is going to be part of facilitating that. And you will see a lot of initiatives going in this direction over the coming months. So if you're a builder who is excited about these new trends, please engage with us, because you will see a lot of developments happening around real-world assets, around digital identity, around everything that has to do with actually bridging the real world with the Web3 world. So you will see that coming. The final bucket was the IOTA airdrop that is going to go to those who staked for assembly, and it will be around 3.5% of all the IOTA tokens. So that in total will then be distributed over a 2-year period. So I think I've mentioned the governance. With this upgrade, the Treasury DAO will also finally become operational. So that will also provide a new funding vehicle to the community, right? So it will be around 54 million IOTA tokens in total that will be accessible. But those tokens will only be accessible once smart contracts are on IOTA. And they will obviously only be released according to a budget that is going to be voted in by all the token holders. So I think over the coming weeks, you will see some token votes in your Firefly wallet about the community Treasury DAO. When it comes to the IOTA token airdrop, I can really recommend all of you to look up your address in the token distribution sheet. So you can actually verify how many IOTA tokens you're going to get. The token distribution sheet will also be fully updated once the status upgrade is happening, which I'll talk about soon. So you can all fully verify the token distribution. One other point to highlight is the one about the unclaimed tokens, right? So with the Chrysalis upgrade, a certain part of the IOTA tokens was not migrated to the new network. So if you guys remember this page here, this is where it shows that 8.6% of IOTA tokens have not been migrated yet. And maybe they haven't been migrated because the token holders have lost access to the tokens or other things. But it's important to mention that those tokens will now be removed out of the circulating supply. So it will reduce the total token supply of IOTA. Sorry, it will reduce the circulating total supply of IOTA. And those tokens will then be released after there have been more valid claims being submitted. This claiming period for the migration will end after 2 years. So after this 2-year period, the community will then actually make a vote on whether those tokens should be burned or whether they should be contributed to the community Treasury DAO. So after those valid claims have expired, the community will then again vote if they should set up a new DAO with those tokens or whether those tokens should be burned, which would then thereby reduce the total token supply. So you will see this coming soon as well. So what's next? This is something important to mention. What's going to be next is that in 2 weeks, on October 4th, most likely, we are going to upgrade the IOTA network to Stardust. We've already briefed most of the major exchanges, and they have already given support. This also includes Binance. And they are going to upgrade to the Stardust network. When we are upgrading IOTA, there will be 2 networks. So the IOTA network will effectively fork. There will be IOTA Stardust and there will be IOTA Stardust Classic. The reason for this is that one network will have the new token distribution and the other network will have the old token distribution. Obviously, the IOTA Foundation and all the other entities within the IOTA ecosystem are going to support the IOTA Stardust fork. So if any community members want to run the IOTA Stardust Classic fork, they're welcome to do so. Obviously, our focus is on maintaining and continuing to run the IOTA Stardust network. We will stop the support of the IOTA Stardust Classic fork 6 weeks, so 4 weeks after the upgrade. And we will also then end the support of the Chrysalis developer network 12 weeks after the upgrade has happened. And it should be important to mention that this has no impact on token holders. So if you hold your IOTA tokens on Firefly, if you hold your IOTA tokens on an exchange, you don't really need to do anything. If you have Firefly, all you need to do is upgrade your wallet. You don't need to do any migration. You don't need to do any claiming. And so it will be a very easy and smooth upgrade process. For node operators, they obviously need to choose which network to support, IOTA Stardust or IOTA Stardust Classic. But the setup itself should be very simple. What's very exciting is that in 2 weeks, IOTA will be upgraded to Stardust. So that also means that we're going to get native asset tokenization. We're going to get NFTs. And we're also going to get the ability to, in the future, launch layer 2 smart contracts with the IOTA EVM. First, we're obviously going to trial the IOTA EVM on the Shimmer network. So this will happen relatively soon. So the builders are already deploying. And so we're preparing everything for the mainnet launch on Shimmer. So once we've sufficiently tested and trialed it on the Shimmer network, we will then also launch the IOTA EVM. So then Shimmer and IOTA will have an EVM and can grow their ecosystems through that. At a later point, Shimmer will then be upgraded with IOTA 2.0, and then IOTA will be upgraded with IOTA 2.0. But that's further down the line. So the validator committee on the IOTA mainnet will also consist of external validators. So the IOTA Foundation will only operate one validator in that network. And there will be a total of 12 validators in this new setup. And those validators are mainly universities and large corporations that we work with, and also external entities. So we're going to share more about these validators in the coming week or two with you as well. Maybe a final point before I go to the AMA. So if you have questions, please already ask them in the channel. The final change that we're making is that we're removing the scientific notation of IOTA with these metric prefixes, and we're moving to a much simpler setup where we simply have one MI, right? One IOTA will equal one IOTA, or 1 million IOTA. Sorry, one MI will equal one IOTA. Now, the main reason why we're doing that, and we've already done this with Shimmer, by the way, is that it simplifies the whole units of measurement and units of accounts with IOTA much more. Because even though it sounds nice to have GI or TI, it's very difficult for people from outside of the IOTA community to actually understand what it actually means. And it was also kind of difficult for exchanges because some of them were trading MyIOTA, some of them were trading IoT, others were trading IOTA. So now we are creating much more conformity, so to say, by using one IOTA as the base unit, and then also having micros or micro as the smallest possible unit in IOTA. So those were all the decisions. I hope that all of you have a lot more background on this and know what's happening. So let me go to the AMA maybe. And so I can answer those. So let me start with Adam Tangle. Why did the IF decide without a community vote to only distribute 8.5% of the inflated token supply to the community in comparison to the original 60% that was presented in the assembly distribution? So I think one important question to answer is like, why is there no token vote? And this is something very important that I want to highlight here. We really believe that those who spend every day working on IOTA are those who are able to make the best possible decision for IOTA. So I hope that all of you also share that realization that people at the IOTA Foundation and people that are close to the IOTA Foundation really are able to make the best possible decision for IOTA. So this is a decision. It was not an easy decision, right? It was very difficult, and it had many debates internally on whether we should do it or whether we should not do it. And while it would be great to do a token vote, what I would really want to avoid is that we're going to completely tear apart the community by having these endless debates and dramas in the community forums where people are trying to be smarter than others, offering better solutions than others, without having all of the context. Right? So we've seen this in the Cosmos community, which also tried to increase the token supply and which also tried to set up an ecosystem fund, where these debates and where this drama within the community completely tore Cosmos apart. Like I was watching it live on Twitter and on their governance forum, how people were really going against each other. So I really want to avoid such a situation where we're tearing IOTA apart because we're trying to do the right thing for the community, right? We are doing the right thing with this decision for IOTA. And I hope that everybody in the community also understands that we're really doing the right thing for IOTA. So ultimately, you can vote which network you want to participate in, whether it's the Stardust fork or whether it's the Stardust Classic fork. This is really something that all of you can then decide how you want to move forward. Ultimately, you also need to make a decision whether you trust us, right? Whether you trust me to make the right decision. So I really hope that you will be able to continue to trust us in this. But ultimately, the decision is yours. We believe that this is the best possible decision we can make for IOTA. While it was a difficult one, it was sort of the only one that we can make. Let me move over to the next one. Do you really... oh, wait. It's kind of hard to figure out which questions to continue. Hi, Dom. Can you tell us when we will get the new IOTAs in the wallet, or when the key point of the evaluation of IOTA Classics to the new IOTAs will be? Do we then have 2 IOTA tokens in the wallet? You will get the new wallet in 2 weeks. So with the Stardust upgrade, you will then also see immediately the token airdrop within your wallet, if you staked, obviously. For IOTA Classics, for the IOTA Classics network, you would need to have a different wallet configuration, and those will then be provided by those network operators further down the line. Obviously, the Firefly wallet will only primarily support the Stardust network, and so new Firefly wallet version would need to be released to support the other network, but that should be very easy to do. And will there be 2 listings on stock exchanges? So all exchanges will obviously continue trading IOTA, and this is what we've aligned with them. So IOTA Classics would need to be listed on exchanges again. Who exactly will be contributors, and who decides who will receive those funds? And why is this separate from the Tangle Ecosystem Association funds? Actually, the funds of the Tangle Ecosystem Association and the UAE Foundation have been reduced for these contributors. So these were basically in part token sales, right? Where those contributors have bought tokens, and there have also been sort of commitments to partners that are supporting IOTA. We will share more of that over the coming weeks on who those are, so that all of you can also understand more what's happening there. Can we get a summary of how many tokens the German IF and its key executives have, and who the key exec owners of the UAE Foundation will be? This should be basic transparency practice. And it's very transparent who the executives of the IOTA Foundation are. So you can go on our website, on the iota.org website, to see who they are. We're obviously not going to share their token holdings because that's a basic privacy need that all of us have, and is also a security risk. All I can say is that I personally only own IOTA tokens, and I only own Shimmer tokens. So I think you can see that. And with the UAE Foundation, we're still in the process of setting it up. We're also in the process of defining who will be on the governance board of the UAE entity. So once we have that set up, we'll also be sharing it with the community. So you will all see who is going to be part of it. Let me look at the other questions. By the way, it's important to mention that all of you can also join Discord. So we will continue the answering questions there. And I think it's also important to mention that we want this to be a process where everybody in the community should be felt heard, right? So if you have concerns, if you have questions, we really want to be upfront and we want to be very transparent with you. How can we ever trust you again that the supply won't be increased again and again? There were promises in the past that token supply would never change. Will there be any actions to make things more concrete? The most obvious way this is being done is through IOTA 2.0. Right? With IOTA 2.0, the network will be operated completely by distributed, like by everybody in the network, basically, right? Everybody is going to be a validator. So the only way to actually make such changes is through a fork, which would then actually need social consensus. Our objective over the next couple of months and years is to really decentralize IOTA so that it doesn't just depend on the IOTA Foundation or a handful of other entities, but there will be dozens of new entities in this IOTA ecosystem that are moving IOTA forward. And this is also why we have opted to sort of go with a higher ecosystem fund allocation for now, so that there will be sufficient funds for decades to come, right? So that IOTA really has a war chest to compete in the market. So the only promise that I can give you that we'll never do this again is a basic promise that we'll never do it again, because I think nobody wants to make such a decision. Nobody wants to be part of such a decision, but it is a decision that had to be made. And this will be the first and the final time that something like that should happen. What happens to the support from VCs, etc., that were set up with Assembly? So we're in contact with all of them. Many of them will be part of a structure where they get either tokens or where they get also reimbursed through third parties. So this is something that we're currently finalizing with them. Obviously, we're working together with some of the most important ones there that will continue to support IOTA and that are going on this journey together with us. So many of them are supportive of this move and also understand why it was made. Why is the airdrop to the community so small? The airdrop was actually calculated based on the monetary value that was previously promised, right, which was this 20% distribution of Assembly, and based on the monetary value of IOTA today, the 3.5% of IOTA tokens. So it's basically the equivalent, or even more, in terms of the monetary value. Many of us support the F and your decisions. How about describing the next month for us? So over the next month, what we're going to see is, first of all, we're going to upgrade IOTA to Stardust. So then we'll finally have tokenization and NFTs on IOTA. We're going to launch the Shimmer EVM. So all of you will be able to participate in an exciting new ecosystem. We'll be finally able to try out the close to, I think, 60 dApps now that are ready on Shimmer. And we are also going to start a IOTA 2.0 education campaign so that all of you will be seeing what is going to happen with IOTA 2.0, how it works, why it is superior to other networks. And we will also be sharing sort of timelines. And we will also launch a testnet, not in the next month, but hopefully very soon. After that, we'll be able to launch the testnet for IOTA 2.0 so that all of you can also try it out and really feel it. In addition to that, on the adoption side, we are going to start sharing what is happening in the UAE. There's a lot of exciting progress updates with our entity and also with the partnerships with the government and the important entities there. And the goal there will also to invite the ecosystem to participate. So the way that it's going to work is that we're bringing some key projects from the ecosystem to the UAE as well. We're helping them be established there and to get the right support. So over the next months or so, you will also be seeing the level of support that we have in the UAE and other countries, and how they will actually help IOTA move forward and gain market share. What's the current plan in terms of hiring new employees, devs? You said you want to keep up with the market. How do you actually ensure this? So our current objective is to really make sure that the developer experience on IOTA is being improved. And we also really want to focus on layer 1 smart contracts. So any hiring that we'll potentially do is only going to be done is mainly going to be done for those areas. Right now, we don't really have any major hiring plans, so to say, because we are happy with the current team structure, and we feel that we are very well structured at the moment. It's not that we intend to go on a spending spree, quite the opposite. We really want to be careful with how funds are being spent, and make sure that we make it into a new market, into a new bull market, with the ecosystem fund to support the ecosystem, right? So it's not that those funds are going to be spent on a hiring spree. We are thinking about what to do in Asia, and we are also thinking about what to do in terms of the ecosystem support. So those will then also be discussions that we're going to have, how they will move forward, and which kind of teams we need to support those areas. But I think in the current market, all of us can agree that it doesn't make any sense to spend a lot of money on growth when none of that will really stick, right? So it doesn't make sense for us to spend money on marketing activities or other growth activities. It only makes sense for us to focus on building more. And so when the market returns and when there's more retail investors and more excitement, it makes more sense for us to also think about how we can step up our marketing initiatives. Why did you decide to unconditionally unlock 10% of the 12% of the TF funds and draw out the community airdrop over 2 years? First of all of the new token supply that is being issued to the IOTA Foundation, to KEA, to the UAE entity, to the contributors, and to the community for the airdrop has the same terms, but 10% unlocked. Only the ecosystem funds then have the 4-year unlock schedule. So the community and the contributors have 2 years. The main reason why there is 10% is so that there is actually enough liquidity in the market to support some of these initiatives that we're doing, and so that we can also start building up the treasury itself. Obviously, through this gradual release of the tokens, the community will get their tokens over 2 years, and the funds will get them over 4 years. So this is usually how it's done in other networks as well. So it's not really anything controversial. Can you explain about the governance and transparency around the ecosystem fund? How will the community be involved, and will it be different from the EDF? It will be very different from the EDF, because the EDF was sort of like the wrong corporate structure to begin with. Because similarly to the IOTA Foundation, the EDF, which was set up as a German entity, was only able to spend funds on the ecosystem and only able to spend funds on research and on grants to universities. So all the funding that we've received for the EDF was never able to support the ecosystem, which was kind of ironic. With this new ecosystem fund, with the Tangle Ecosystem Association and with the UAE Foundation, we really are able to directly involve the community in setting up committees. So as part of the charter of the entities. And we're also actually able to allocate funds to the community. So we are able to give out grants to projects around the world. Even if they're for-profit companies, even if they're startups or individuals, we can finally give out grants. This is something that we haven't been able to do before. And because we were restricted legally on how we can actually spend the funds that we received. So the new ecosystem fund, managed by those two entities, will finally be able to actually support the ecosystem. The way that the community will be involved in this is obviously by setting up these committees, and we are going to share transparency reports. So again, this is part of the charter of those entities, that there needs to be a yearly transparency report on how the funds are being spent. We also intend to actually share quarterly reports, similarly to how the DAO Growth Committee is doing it, or the Shimmer Growth Committee is doing it right now, where there are these quarterly updates on how the funds are being spent. So we intend to do that as well. And I think gradually we can also think about how the community can be more closely involved in the governance of these entities. You mentioned releasing another testnet for IOTA 2.0. Will this be in addition to Shimmer? And if yes, why? So this is sort of going to be, so for IOTA 2.0, this is going to be the sort of the release candidate. So this testnet has all the major features in there, and it's going to be the final stage of testing before it will actually hit Shimmer. So after this testnet has been operational for some time, it will then or Shimmer will then be upgraded with IOTA 2.0. So this is sort of the final stage before it goes live on Shimmer. It's great to hear that the EDF model will not be the ecosystem. This will allow funding and empowering the community. Yeah, I agree. What about sharding? What's happening with that? We are going to make a major R&D event by the end of the year again to really also define our roadmap. And the goal there will also be to define very clearly what's going to happen after IOTA 2.0, what our focus will be. So sharding is sort of something on top of our agenda. And right now, the focus is obviously on delivering IOTA 2.0 as quickly as possible and to move forward with layer 1 smart contracts. So we'll share more with the community. There's some very exciting, there's some very exciting efforts being done within the community. Within the foundation, where we're really trying to figure out how we can be as transparent as possible, so that there's no secrets, that there's no IOTA Foundation versus community, but so that we're really creating together with the community, so that all of the progress updates, including ETAs, are going to be shared with the community. So this is something this is going to be a major overhaul of how we are going to operate in the foundation, and it's also going to be a major overhaul on how we're going to interact with the community. And this is something that we will share with all of you over the coming weeks, so that you can also understand how the progress is going to look like and how all of you can participate. So I think I'll leave it at that. Maybe we'll do another AMA over the next few days if there's more questions. Maybe we can do a more structured AMA because it's kind of difficult with YouTube. I hope that all of you understand that we're really in this to make sure that IOTA succeeds, right? And that IOTA is going to be one of the biggest DLT Web3 ecosystems. We want to make sure that we're not missing out, that we're not failing to catch up with the competition, but that we're really able to move forward. So now we are combining technology with the EVM release, with IOTA 2.0, with the right funding, with the ecosystem support, and with the ecosystem fund, and with the right supporters, which includes entire countries, so that we can move forward and so that we can really succeed and accelerate the adoption of IOTA. So while it was a very difficult decision to make, I think those 4 decisions that we have made and that we've shared with you are really going to transform IOTA. And I also want to mention that what sets us apart in IOTA is that we never give up, right? No matter how difficult it is, no matter the challenges that we face, no matter the drama, no matter the difficulty, we always move forward. And we move forward because we're driven by a higher purpose. And we are in this because we really want to make sure that we are realizing the impact that we want to have in the real world. That IOTA isn't just a crypto project, but that IOTA is really a foundational technology that is going to power our digital economy, right? We're really in this for a higher purpose. And that's why, unlike other projects and teams, we are willing to make these difficult decisions to make sure that IOTA succeeds in the future. We're willing to break these promises, so to say. We're willing to make these transformational changes so that we're not just able to catch up with the competition, but so that we're able to get ahead of them, so that we're really able to succeed. And so I hope that all of you understand that we're doing this for the better of IOTA, and so that we can move forward and that we can create an exciting future together with all of you. So I'm really grateful for the support of all of you. I'm grateful for all of you to be part of the community. If you have any questions, I'm going to be in Discord. I'll answer questions. Our team will also answer questions. And otherwise, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next AMA. Thank you.